else remember the good old days when women used to dress with class? Petition to bring back modesty, anybody? I've gotten this comment dozens of times across my videos, and I love it, because to me, it tells me one thing.
Do you know what people used to do?
You have no idea what women wore. Hi, I'm Gabby. I love vintage clothes, and today we are gonna take a little stroll through history, or shall I say a hot girl walk, hey? Because I regret to inform you, but modesty is not just some ancient lost virtue. Now, this whole video idea came to me because I saw this photo and I thought to myself, oh, I can only imagine what men would say in my comment sections if I wore that in my videos. Women in 2025 belong to the streets. I wish we could go back to the good old days. Only one problem. It was back in the day. This is Shirley MacLaine in 1964 in the film What a Way to Go. And these costumes, done by the absolute legend and icon Edith Head, would literally blow these commenters out of the water. That's when I realized people don't actually mean
women used to dress modestly.
They mean that their perception of the past is really, really specific and narrow. So that got me thinking, what would happen if they actually knew what women wore? Would they rethink their comments? Would they still want us to be back in the day? What day are they talking about? Or would they be scandalized? It's probably that one. Today we are going to find out, because I'm going to be taking some actual, real, true comments that I've actually seen on mine and other people's videos with the names blurred out because I don't know what's going on in their lives. And we are going to go through these misconceptions one by one and prove that history is not homogeneous. And a quick disclaimer before we start. I am not anti-modesty, I am pro-accuracy. In a day and age such as this, I think it's really easy to mythologize the past and have this idea that it was all one thing when it wasn't. I am not here to say that dressing modestly is bad, nor am I here to unpack the long history of over-sexualizing women's bodies. That would be an entirely different video and honestly probably a thesis. I'm not even really gonna say why people were wearing this or like what people thought about it. I'm just here to be petty. Because not everyone born before 1980 dressed like a nun, and not everyone born after 1980 dresses like a Kardashian, okay? Plus, if you're gonna comment on women's fashion, the least you can do is know a little history. I got you.
I wish we could go back to the days before everybody had to show up their bodies in tight clothes.
Let's do it. Let's go back into the day, the 1950s, because they're always talking about the 50s. Now, the first thing that comes to mind for me is the wiggle skirt of the 50s and 60s, which got its name from the way that you would literally have to wiggle to move because these skirts and dresses were so tight on your bum and thighs. Now, it was popularized by celebrities like Marilyn Monroe and other hourglass Hollywood starlets. However, it was worn by a lot of everyday women as well. Even into the 40s, we have examples of these very tight styles, and to be quite frank, besides the full circle skirts of the 1950s, this intensely tight hourglass shape was kind of like the defining silhouette of the 50s. So, don't know what you're talking about. And you know what? Maybe you aren't talking about the 50s. You want to go back further to, like, say the 1910s with the precursor to the wiggle skirt, the hobble skirt. The hobble skirt was supposedly born from a woman who was on an airplane, so she decided to tie a piece of string around her skirt to prevent it from flying up, and then she was photographed in it, and America thought to themselves, yes, let's immobilize an entire generation of women. Women would literally hobble, hence the name. These hobble skirts were very tight, very restrictive. In fact, they got so much flack that there were political cartoons of men saying, wow, this is so tight. Sound familiar to anybody else? And maybe you're not talking about the 1910s, you're talking about the 70s or the 80s when literal lycra and spandex material was popularized to stick to your skin. Surely you're not talking about the Cher era with incredible glitzy, glammy, tight disco dresses. Disco dresses alone, you can sometimes see their heartbeats. Let's give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's talk about a more safe era, the 1930s, right? The Great Depression. Skirts were notoriously longer. Surely women were not wearing extremely tight dresses then. That's where you'd be wrong. Hollywood literally popularized an entirely new style of cutting fabric on the bias or on the diagonal to guarantee maximum cling. It was literally engineered so that it would stick to your body and fabric would flow like liquid, okay? These dresses are some of the most absolutely iconic, probably in film and Hollywood history, and also considered quite scandalous because you weren't wearing corsets or other undergarments. I mean, how could you in something like this? And I must mention here, the pre-Hays Code costumes. Established in 1934, the Hays Code guaranteed that certain things were not shown in film, like anything to do with being gay, or disrespecting God, or kissing for more than 3 seconds, or too much skin. Pre-Hays Code costumes are wackadoodle, and if somebody wore this today, I can already imagine exactly what the comments would say.
Of course people don't respect her. She dresses like that. What would you expect?
What is it? I could be wrong, but I think it's a man. That's a man?
Now, I will concede to you, maybe you're talking about the extremely boxy, boyish silhouettes of the 1920s, right? This is, objectively speaking, not tight.
If skirts are decreed short by fashion, the flapper goes to extremes and has them shorter than she should. She wears loud clothes and has an uncouth manner.
Nope. People were mad at that too.
What's with everything being so low cut these days? Women used to have class.
What's the stimulus that brings on this sudden emotional response of anger?
Let's unpack this very valid historical concern. I have a feeling you're not talking about the 1980s, because if you were, then you would have to file a complaint with every single keyhole, halter, and plunging neckline designer between 1982 and 1989. So maybe you're referring to the 1970s? The Cher era? I don't know. Disco dresses could be pretty crazy. Halter tops. Okay, the 60s. We can do that, right? Which notoriously did have more modest necklines, lots of big collars. Granted, there's definitely exceptions to that general rule. Yes, the 1950s. So sweet, so refined, unless you literally went to any cocktail party. Sweetheart necklines, strapless gowns, whatever the heck this is. I actually think we might be getting lower cut as we go further back.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how, like, 40s women had actual class.
Oh, absolutely they did. Class and cleavage. Everywhere. All right, fine, you want real modesty, you're talking about the 1930s. With pre-Hays Code Hollywood bias cut dresses, right? We already went over this. Two honorable mentions from this time. Greta Garbo in Meta Hari. Apparently this was a press photo that didn't even make it out into the movie because this dress was not only so low cut, but also completely sheer. Second honorable mention, Kay Johnson in Madam Satan. Need I say more? No.
Well, then I'm talking about further back.
Okay, how about the 1900s with high necks and... okay.
Go back further!
The 1800s, 1812, like the Bridgerton era with... oh...
further!
I think we went too far back. And yeah, having your entire chest out was occasionally historically accurate.
Everything is so short these days.
Everything you say?
I don't understand you people. I mean, all these picky little points you keep bringing up, they don't mean nothing.
I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt and play devil's advocate and assume that maybe you were specifically talking about the trend of the micro minis that's hot right now. Those like little skirts that people are referring to as belts. Turns out we didn't even invent that. Behold the 1960s, where the miniskirt was the cultural reset. Now, lots of people credit this to Mary Quant, although designers before did do miniskirts. However, the minis of the 60s were so short they literally had to change tax laws in the UK. Prior, skirts that were over a certain length above the knee were considered children's clothing, therefore not taxed. However, in the 60s, when skirts got to their shortest, could be 5, 6, 7 or more inches above the knee, the British government went,
"It was the youth, but now it's everyone."
and they taxed them accordingly. And these weren't just worn by teenage girls. For example, these were worn by flight attendants. Flight attendants are kind of a whole different conversation, but no, they were literally paying people to have a profession where you would wear. Think Mary Quant, think Twiggy, think Jenny Shrimpton, think Andre Courrèges. And in the late 60s, early 70s, miniskirts got competition from hot pants, which got their name because, whoa, I'm feeling hot looking at these, whoa. These could be incredibly, incredibly short. Studio 54, Daisy Dukes. This was the golden era of the entire thigh, and I'm not even going to touch on the shorts of the 80s. But maybe you're thinking to yourself, that's just the sinful 60s and 70s. Let's go back to the 1920s, where skirts don't actually tend to be as short as people think that they were. At their shortest, they were about knee length, and yet people said it was the death of decency. Maybe you're referring to pre-Hays Code Hollywood. Okay, no, just kidding. Those are actually notoriously long. The 1930s wasn't necessarily... I take it back.
Editing Abby here, I'm jumping in to say that I didn't even mention all of the examples of incredibly short shorts from the 40s and 50s. So like those pure wholesome eras, not exactly what you think they were.
Crop tops are literally ruining modern fashion.
The madder he gets, the worse it becomes.
This one comes up all the time. So I did this poll last year where I asked people what their least favorite modern trend was. And like probably half of them were crop tops. If you don't like a crop top, no judgment here. I just want to start by saying that the idea of a bare midriff is not new, like literally at all. I tend to be most comfortable talking about 20th century Western fashion because I have done the most research on my grandma's collection here. However, even I know that in non-Western cultures, the concept of a stomach out has been around for literally centuries. However, if we are talking about Western culture, I would say that crop top became popular in the 20th century. And technically this midriff moment starts with who else other than Madeline Vianney, the inventor of the bias cut 1930s dress. Sorry. But actually, really, who was creating these dresses with these cutouts that were way ahead of their time? Like, are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. By the late 30s and 40s, you see two-piece play suits, halter top, and resort wear that shows off your midriff like it's no big deal. And to be completely honest, it wasn't. I mean, imagine a lady lounging at her resort wearing a high-waisted pair of shorts with a little tiny bralette, okay? It was sporty, it was chic, you wore it. It would be so easy for me to just go through photo after photo after photo of incredible women at the beach bearing their entire stomach, but I'm not gonna do that because that's the beach. I'm gonna try to keep it to not just beachwear. Then in the 1950s, things did get a little bit more buttoned up. However, it didn't disappear altogether. We still see crop tops in sportswear and resort wear, pinup girls, especially with celebrities like Bridget Bardot, Marilyn Monroe. The 60s and the 70s though, crop tops exploded in popularity. Cher, Jane Birkin, Farrah Fawcett were all doing these little crop tops because it was just youth culture, and youth culture was about freedom and wearing what you wanted to wear. And fun fact, by the time we get to the 80s and 90s, we start to see more crop tops with men. Like, think Prince or like little football players or whatever. And I have this feeling that if people in the 30s could handle seeing a full midriff, then you can probably handle seeing one at Target.
Let the world take care of its own worries. You'll help yourself most by concentrating on your own affairs.
I couldn't possibly tackle all of the comments, but because they literally never stop, this is gonna be a rapid fire round of some of my favorites.
2024 girls think it's okay to dress like they're naked at the gym.
Be grateful she's wearing pants, my guy. 80s aerobic wear was literally thongs over spandex if they decided to wear spandex at all. Whatever you do, do not look up the Jamie Lee Curtis and John Travolta scene in Perfect the movie. You will croak.
Blue-haired girls are ruining femininity.
Rage.
You're gonna have to tell that to every single 1960s lady who dyed her hair a bright color because Jane Shrimpton said it was mod. Maybe it wasn't as common, I will give you that, but we have been dyeing our hair unnatural colors for a very long time, baby.
You think you can post a thirst trap and people will still respect you? Embarrassing.
Shut up.
Do you know what a pinup girl is? They would literally mail out these postcards. So.
Women today are literally lying about their shapes with padded bras and shapewear.
And a habit is being developed. A habit of allowing such things to annoy him.
Oh, my sweet summer child. Have you ever heard of a corset? Prior to the 1960s-ish, pretty much everyone was unanimously wearing shapewear. Corsets, girdles. Literally in the 1900s, they wore fake butts and bosoms, okay? This concept of just naturally having that body is relatively recent, and also it was never natural to begin with.
Almost like history isn't linear and progress isn't inevitable, so if we don't fight for it, then it might not happen. Hell yeah!
So the next time someone comments,
Women used to dress modestly.
remember that they are remembering a mythologized past that never really existed, Or at least they need to be a little more specific. Fashion has always been revealing at some times, in the same way that it's always been covered up and elegant and classy and trashy and all of the things, because if there is one thing that is true about fashion history, it's that not everybody wore the same stuff. And maybe the issue was never about the clothes.
I forgot to do an outro, but if you enjoyed this video, it would mean the absolute world to me if you would subscribe. This is my first soiree back into full-length videos, so I would like to do more of them, but I'm still learning, so I know there was some stuff that was out of focus. So if you have tips and tricks, let me know down below, and sincerely, thank you for being here.